10 seconds.
Okay.
There is a 10-second delay, so when I'm watching for chats, I'll get those faster. So don't expect a quick response from the audience if you answer the questions because there's a delay.
Okay.
And I think we are live now. Yep, we are live. Well, welcome everybody. We're back. This is our first 12 o'clock live show. With me is Lieutenant Brian Murphy, and he has got an amazing story. We're not going to cover the story. You can find this story a lot. One of the reasons we can't is because of the restrictions on YouTube. So this is one of the challenges that we're having. But let me know if you can hear me. I turned down the volume as I was hearing myself, and that doesn't work really well. Well, welcome, Brian. How are you, sir?
I'm doing good. How you doing, Doc?
Doing great. Thank you so much for being here. Again, folks, Lieutenant Brian Murphy was a police officer. He encountered an incredible situation. He was the first responder to a mass shooting, and he survived being shot 15 times. You can look up his story, Lieutenant Brian Murphy of Wisconsin, the Sikh temple shooting, SIKH for the Sikh temple. And you can read the story there. It's an incredibly powerful story and an amazing story. But what we're actually going to do is talk about how he overcame it. So we're going to be talking about mindfulness, which a lot of people are wondering about, how to handle stress, especially during these times in this world today that we live in. Also, if you're in law enforcement or the military, I know a lot of individuals who are in law enforcement and military will watch this show. So we're going to talk about the benefits of mindfulness, being able to focus. And I want to take Brian, I kind of threw this going to be a curveball for him, but I'm going to also ask him about mindfulness in the regards to situational awareness, because I think it also plays a big role, especially in handling situations that are highly stressful. So let's not waste any more time. Welcome to the show, Brian. Thank you so much for being here.
I appreciate you having me, Doc.
Again, folks, if you are listening, make sure you let me know if you can hear everything we're talking about. I think you can. I had to turn down my volume. Kevin says, remember that day and news. Great to see you healed, sir, and healthy.
Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you very much, Kevin. Absolutely. I completely agree. And Brian is an awesome individual, still going around. Well, not right now, going around lecturing and doing presentations. Brian, tell us a little bit about mindfulness. What's this all about?
I think that the most simplest way to talk about mindfulness is you're just living in the now. Especially, I think in the law enforcement line of work, you're hit with a lot of stimuli. You're thinking and overthinking things, and what happens then is because there's so many thoughts going through your head, sometimes those thoughts get lost, and action sometimes suffer as a result of all these things going through our heads, and it leads to higher stress. It leads to poor sleep. It leads to just drinking. It leads to a lot of things. But for me, when I think of mindfulness, and I'm sure like a lot of other people, we thought, oh, this is all, yoga and Zen and all that. But it really, while it has a basis in it, I think it affects everybody every day. And the more you can be mindful of things, I think the better your experiences are, just whether it's in law enforcement or your home life or anything. I think being in the moment is paramount.
And in today's world, it's kind of weird because we're so inundated with so many different types of stimuli. We're on the phone all the time. We're on social media. I know you're watching this right now on YouTube, but still, we're doing multitasking stuff like you're watching TV show and watching your YouTube channel or looking at Twitter or whatever other social media aspects. We're constantly busy doing other things. Does this interfere with mindfulness, you think?
Oh, absolutely. When you have 10 things going on, what are you really focusing on? And how long are you focusing on it? Yeah, it was funny you were talking about the social media. You look around and all day, every day, and this is what you see is a phone is attached to you. So if you're worried about, social media posting or likes or, you're watching TV while you're watching your kid, while you're doing this, really, what are you focusing on? And to me, I think you lose the enjoyment and the awareness simply by relegating everything to the same stature, but it's not. And we lose, I think, in law enforcement more than anything, we lose sight of ourselves and we lose sight of who we are because we're so wrapped up in thinking about what's the public thinking, what's my boss thinking, what's everybody else thinking. You really do lose your identity. And at the end of the day, you know, a career could last anywhere from 10 to 35 years. But at the end of the day, it's still going to be you. And if you lose yourself in all these extraneous things, when it's your time, you do look back. And I've done it myself, obviously, after my incident is, who was that and who am I now?
Great points. Great points. Let me ask you this, Brian. Can you tell us a little bit about your BAM training? I want people to understand that, especially if you're in law enforcement, military, business at all. Tell us a little bit about what you do in BAM training. It's BAM.
So my training company, my wife and I had talked about this after the incident, and both of us thought it was important to bring the incident to light, to show all the aspects of it. Uh, what were the good things? What were the bad things? And then after the incident was over, what happened next? There was a lot that, and I bring it specific to my family, that I was thinking about so many things, and what had happened to me, and my hand, my throat, blah blah blah, and I lost sight of what's important now. And what was important to me was I needed to make sure my family was all right and make sure I was going to be okay in the future. So I talked about, and I go over combat breathing. I go over, again, living in the moment. But I think the whole idea of BAM is to show, even when there is a bad incident, things are going to go good. Some parts are going to go bad. You improve on it. But the bottom line is it's your life. You have to go on with your life. And, rear view mirror doesn't show you anything other than where you were. And, it's about looking ahead.
So, how would you recommend for people to become more mindful? What are some of the techniques you would recommend?
Just focus on that. But to me, I wholeheartedly believe it all starts with breathing. I sometimes I can remember it was early on in the career. I was just sergeant, and it was a chase, and one of my guys had stopped. There was a car full of four, and he had him out, and I remember walking up to him, and I noticed, I'm like, dude, you're not breathing. Just breathe. And the more I started focusing on that, and our department was big on, autogenic breathing. They call it combat or box or SEAL breathing. But what I found is the more you can breathe, the more you can control yourself. And sometimes I think we look at the whole mindfulness thing as like this is something new, and it's not. It goes back thousands of years. You and I have talked before. I'm a big Stoic fan. I love Marcus Aurelius. And what they always talk about is the only thing you can truly control in life is yourself. You can't control events. The events happen. It's how you react to it. And that's where mindfulness comes into play, is understanding in your whole role, you are a small piece of it. And the only thing you can control is you. And the only way to control you is by properly breathing.
That's great stuff. And yeah, I'm a big fan as well of the Stoics. I think you can follow Brian on Instagram as well. I think you're under BAM training over there.
Mhm. Yes, sir.
Yeah, and you can follow me as well if you like. I'm over there, and I post every so often some of the Stoics. We know Seneca and Marcus Aurelius, and those guys. And Epictetus is another one. And he reminded me with his comment, right? I think you probably remember now. We're not disturbed by the events. We're disturbed by our perception of the events, and it's all in
Right.
your head. A lot of times, not everything, but a lot of the things are in our head. Brian, great stuff. Now, in regards to law enforcement, they go through a lot of stress. They encounter a lot of situations. somebody says, "Oh, Brian, how am I going to be mindful when I'm in the middle of a conflict? Right? I got an altercation. People are yelling at me. What am I going to do during that time?" Any suggestions for those individuals?
Yeah, again, I still think it goes back to, and I remember in recruit school, uh, it was first day, and your force guy comes in and he makes me sit on a table, and he says, "Do you think I can make you get off that table?" And I said, "No, I don't think you can," because I was bigger than him, and I thought, okay. So he came and he put me in a gooseneck, paying compliance, and eventually I got up off the desk, and he made the point. He said, it was still I was still in control of myself. Even though he had put me in pain compliance, it was me going along and me making the conscious decision to avoid pain by going along with the program. And where I think this comes into play in the conflict is the only thing you can, again, go back to it, the only thing you can control is yourself. And regardless of how there's the outcome there, you're going to move on. You're going to go past this. But to make other people go along with the program comes with you being in control of yourself first. And regardless of that, and I found this out later on, so much of what we do is how other people react. And I'll give you a quick.
Mm.
This was right after the incident. And my throat was really bad, and the most I could do was whisper. And IACP had brought my wife and I out to their conference in San Diego. And long story short, we're in the mall, and we're in whatever store it was, Macy's or something. And I didn't know where the restroom was, so I could really only talk in a whisper. And the funny thing is, the more I talked to people in a whisper, that's exactly how they talk to me. So it's mirroring. They're
Mhm.
mirroring what you're doing. If you're bringing aggression, they bring aggression. And by no means do I ever say forfeit officer safety, forfeit yourself. No, no, no. You control you, and that's how you get other people to go along quicker, better. You're less stressed out then, which means you're going to be less stressed out when the day of work is over. You didn't jack up your adrenal system. You didn't, knock out your heart rate and your breathing. It's all, again, it's to me, it still goes back to that breathing aspect, because so much of what causes us to have even PTSD is it's brought back, and it's related to how did we handle that immediate situation, and how do you get over that?
Great stuff. And you know what, Brian? Correct me if I'm wrong, but this is really important for relationships. Even for the law enforcement and military, especially military who've been deployed and had to face combat, whatnot. When they're coming back home and they get into a dispute or whatever, right? A difference of opinion or whatever it is. Being able to be mindful in the middle of an argument with your significant other, right? We tend to hurt the ones we love the most, unfortunately, but it's a great time to be really mindful at that point. Understand what you're feeling, understand what the person's saying to you, right? We have that what's they call? I think it's called the principle of charity, where you don't assume that the other person's trying to hurt you, and a lot of times, but even being mindful of those things, being mindful of what they're saying. You think that's important in an everyday relationship?
I think it's probably the most important thing. That's the key to the whole being in a good relationship, is being able to communicate. And I think as a law enforcement officer, and I was in the military as well, uh, we're used to being into control, and when people aren't going along with our program, it annoys us. And I think uh, the quicker you can get off that, and the more you can become mindful of what they're saying and actually listening. And we've talked about this in the past, the difference between listening and hearing, and the idea that I want to listen not only to what they're saying, but how they're saying it, because I may be missing something. And we know this when we're talking to suspects, that they're telling us a story, but their body language is telling us a different story. But if you think about the same thing in a relationship, sometimes your better half is saying, No, go ahead. You can go. Yeah, go. And your mind is saying, okay, they're good with the program because you didn't watch their body language and see, no, they're not happy. This is affecting them, and I need to take it back a minute and truly get it. And the last part of this is, and I talked to my daughter just recently, and we were discussing, and I said, part of the problem is you just want to talk. And I remember reading this somewhere, and it was, when you talk, you're just repeating what you already know. When you listen is when you learn something. And I said, you need to take that with you every day. When you're having a conversation, just don't wait for the other person to be done so you can make your point. Listen to what they're saying and gather that information.
That's great advice. Great advice. And folks, you're more than welcome to share your insight as well. If you want to give us any of your thoughts or opinions, I know people are watching right now. You can comment as well. And if you have any questions for Lieutenant Brian Murphy, let me know on the chat on the side. Also, if you want to support our channel, make sure to share and subscribe. If you can, share this video for other people if you think somebody's going to benefit from listening to it, if they're in law enforcement themselves right now. Brian, we're heading over to breathing now. And I wanted to talk a little bit about that because I know breathing, good stuff, says Marcus. Marcus Aurelius, this is Handel's name. So there you go. Um, one of the things that you talk about breathing, and breathing is really underestimated. People don't realize that. You and I know this more so than you when you were in that officer involved shooting the OIS. There's a lot of issues that happen, right? Your heart rate flies up when we're talking about Cooper's color codes for situational awareness. So if you're in condition red, your elevated heart rate, for condition black, and you start getting, you're not listening to everything, your heart rate goes up, you don't pay attention, your breathing goes up really fast, and that causes a lot of problems too. Tell us a little bit about breathing and what the benefits are, controlling your breath.
I got a guy I know, his name is Brian McKenzie. He started CrossFit Endurance. And if you want to know the scientific part of it, look up BMAC, Brian McKenzie on Instagram. He posts much more of the scientific data and how breathing affects your resiliency, how taking in too much oxygen doesn't allow the CO2 out of your system. That's what causes audio exclusion and tunnel vision and all those things. But I mean, from a department, we started this back in the early 90s. We noticed that there were officers getting involved in chases, and the end result of the chase wasn't always the best outcome, simply because, man, we've all been there when you're driving a car and you're trying to talk on the radio and, you're doing 90 miles an hour and your breathing's all the way through the roof. What happens at the end of that is you have to do something with all that energy, all that adrenaline, and we don't always do it the best. We want to take that pound of flesh out. And the truth of the matter is, again, we go back to controlling yourself, and you're able to make those decisions. You don't get tunnel vision. And for me, once the incident was over and I was waiting for them to come pick me up, that was one of the first things I thought is, man, I got to get control of myself. I got to get my breathing down. I have to get my heart rate, knowing that if I didn't, there's a good chance I'm going to go into shock. There's a good chance, I'm going to bleed out simply because my blood pressure is going through the roof. And I was fortunate that what I was able to practice beforehand came about during the incident. I was able to give him a description, tell him where I was shot, all those things. And when we got to the hospital, which was about a 15-minute ride, my blood pressure was normal, my respirations were normal, and it said been after getting shot 15 times. So what you practice every day is absolutely what you're going to do under stress. We know that. And that having done it for so long, and we would talk about it even when we would do force on force, as part of training, is you can go so much longer when you can control your breathing. When there's that opportunity mid-fight to take your breath, catch your breath, then you need to do that. Then, breathing is living, and that's what it's about. And the best way to to make sure you live longer is to breathe better. So if you get the opportunity, go check out Brian McKenzie. It's called Shift now. But uh, again, I think sometimes what we lose, Doc, is that ability to go find new things that are going to make your life and your job easier.
Absolutely. And I know, just to give you some insight, folks, a lot of times when you do deep breathing, it activates your vagus nerve, which activates your parasympathetic system and helps you to calm down and relax. The average person takes about 10 to 14 breaths a minute. So if you can slow that down and slow it down to 3, 4, 5 breaths a minute, you can find places to show you the deep breathing. Brian McKenzie, as Brian Murphy just talked about right now, those things can make a big difference. Even if you're in an argument with your significant other, take a deep breath, not just one, take a couple of them. You'll be surprised because your vagus nerve gets activated. It slows everything down in your world, and you're able to think a little bit more clearly. You not become so emotionally reactive. Even I fall prey to this, so I get it. So Brian, we got a couple more minutes here. No questions yet from anybody in the audience. That happens. As we get ready to start wrapping up, in today's day and age, we got a lot of stuff going on. There's a lot of stress. I found out that breathing, deep breathing at night before I go to bed with a little bit of meditation helps me get some sleep like that.
And, it's funny you brought it up because that's one of the things that I had issues with after was just stopping all the thoughts from going in your head. And the easiest way to do that is stop trying to think about everything and just focus on, and it's not just deep breathing. It's like mentally watching the air come in, how your body feels, and letting it out, feeling it going out of your body. And I know it's, you know it as well as I do. I mean, I was SWAT command. I was in the Marines, and you're like, oh, that breathing is bullshit. No. It's dead on the money. It's what, if you do that for 10 minutes when you go to bed, don't even use the TV. Don't put your phone on. Just stay calm for that 10 minutes. Focus on your breathing. It's amazing how better you sleep, how much better you feel in the morning. And the funny thing about that is, if I do it at night and it works at night, it's going to work during the day. And if you have the opportunity to just take a couple minutes during the day to just take a break for a couple minutes and do the same thing, you'll be amazed how it changes your attitude, how you see things more clearly.
Absolutely. I couldn't say it better than that. Folks, we're getting ready to wrap up here in a couple of minutes. Again, this week we're doing live shows every day, Monday through Friday, 12 p.m. Pacific time with different guests. Tomorrow we're going to have Tony Blauer, who actually Brian knows, and he's going to be talking about his program and how to handle fear. I can't wait. You can find Tony Blauer. You can search him. You'll learn he's been around for like 25, 30 years. 40 years. Why didn't want to age him? 40 years. And we're also going to be talking to Del Spiegel. She's a CrossFit trainer on Wednesday. So she's going to give us some exercise tips, and we're going to have some fun talks about relationships as well. So you definitely want to ask if you were into working out. Thursday, we're going to be talking to FBI profiler Andy Bringle, my partner. He was here last week. We're going to be talking about why are people leaving California? Why are people leaving cities in general? So we're going to take a look at that. And then Friday, we also have another guest coming on, Ernest Emerson. He makes knives. He's a knife maker. And he's going to be talking to us about his new book coming out soon on the psychology of fear. So we're talking about fear again. And we're going to be looking at that. And we're going to be talking a little about the protests and whatnot, and how that can play a role in fear as well. So you might want to catch that one. And who knows what comes up in the next couple of weeks. We have a lot more guests. I can't wait. I think next week we have Sheriff Lamb. If you remember Sheriff Lamb from Live PD, he's also been on other shows. He's going to be here coming to talk about the border situation. So I can't wait. Brian, I thank you so much for being here. I truly appreciate it, my friend.
Oh, after hearing that lineup, I'm glad you got me out of the way. You get the good speakers. I've known Tony for a long time. Our department subscribed to his spirit training way back in the 90s. We kept it going. I think that absolutely helped me through my incident. It's again, and Emerson, I thought they were doing did somebody do a podcast or write a book or something, 100 Deadly Skills? And
that was Clint Emerson. That's Clint Emerson. Yeah, this is Ernest Emerson.
All right,
Yeah.
I knew it was an Emerson.
No, Ernest Emerson actually has a knife making shop up in LA. I think it is somewhere in LA. But
Okay,
we have some really great conversations. I don't think I've brought you in here. Kevin says thank you, by the way.
thanks, Kevin.
Thank you, Kevin, for listening as well. Ernest will be here Friday. He's got some great stuff, and he's talked a lot about situational awareness, which we actually didn't cover. I wanted to do that for the last couple of minutes. Situational awareness, we hear that a lot. People being alert to what they're doing. Don't pay attention. Don't walk down in the street, especially at night, looking at your phone. I got a couple of videos coming up in the next day or two. We're going to talk a little bit more about those tips. But mindfulness plays a big role in situational awareness, doesn't it?
I think it does simply because that when you're inundated, when you're able to stop your mind from looking at 1,000 things, you can focus. It's like you say, you can focus better anytime you watch. And I watch your Instagram site, and I look at the times where someone's paying no attention whatsoever, and bad things happen. And it's like, but what were they doing before the bad thing happened? And it was 10 other things. They were on the phone, they were not looking around. And again, the more you can just live in the moment and experience it and think it, it goes back to, like Brian Willis, what's important now. Well, if I'm going out to my car in a parking lot, what's important right this second is making sure there's nobody else around, making sure I'm not being followed. And it's not paranoid, it's just being totally aware of what's going on. And if you have children, we talk to them very early on. Don't talk to strangers. What is that? That situational awareness is someone's trying to distract you to do something bad, and it's the same thing. Only when you get older, you think it's not going to happen because my phone's important, or I got to do something else, and it's not. Just pay attention to what's going on.
Absolutely. And you know what? Because unfortunately, the perpetrators, they're looking for those weak moments. So when you get into the car, folks, here's my tip before we leave you. When you get into the car, if you're in a parking lot or whatever, don't look at your phone when you're walking through the car. Don't look at your phone when you sit in the car. Go to your car, check your surrounding area, go in your car, lock the door, turn your engine, get out, look at your phone in the next minute or two. Because I tell you, they're going to be watching that moment, that little transition point from you getting into your car. And be careful. That's it for me. Thank you so much, Brian, for being here. We truly appreciate it, my friend.
No problem. Again, anytime you need me, Doc, I'm around. I appreciate you having me.
Folks, make sure you leave your messages. And for those who are catching this recording, thank you very much. If you want to support our channel, please make sure to share and subscribe. We also have Super Chat now. If you want to check that out, you can help us out supporting us too with Super Chat. Thanks again, everyone. We'll